The first time we walked through the doors at Life.Church, the church was in a small little bicycle factory.
I can remember the first time that Nikki and I walked into Life.Church. It was just excitement and anticipation, never really sure what you were going to see.
I remember sitting down and looking down the row, and you could just see the life change. You could visualize it.
I walked into this place that was a little bit rough around the edges. It was new, it was fresh, and you just had a sense of expectation that God was going to do something special.
Welcome to Life.Church this morning for our first service.
Amy and I really felt called to start a different kind of church, but we, quite honestly, were really afraid to do so. We went to visit a church in California when Crystal Lewis, back before she was well known, was singing the song, "Come Just As You Are." And when we saw all of these people coming forward as they were to receive Christ, we just said, that's it, that's what we want. We want a church like that, where people could come just as they are. And as we were actually praying, driving along in my 1989 Honda Accord, guess what happened? The very same Crystal Lewis song came on the radio. I looked at Amy, she looked at me, and we said, let's start the church.
That really stirred me when Craig was sharing that he felt God calling us to plant a church.
He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Proverbs 8:35 says, whoever finds God finds life. Welcome to Life.Church this morning for our first service.
The first day we met in this small 2-car garage, and unfortunately it was a very snowy Sunday, and I was afraid nobody was going to come anyway, but the snow made it even worse. And at the end of the hour, I went to present the gospel because I'd committed to invite people to know Jesus, and I looked out and I thought, well, anybody who came in the snow certainly knows Jesus. And I never will forget when I said, if you want to call on Jesus and be forgiven of your sins and commit your life to Him, that 7 people raised their hands on the very first day, and that was the beginning of something very, very special.
There was so much excitement in the air, so much expectation of what was going to happen and what was this church going to be all about, and it was just awesome.
But when we started the church, we had nothing, honestly, nothing. And as the church grew, we were really blown away. We moved from a garage into an elementary school. We were there for about 5 months before the elementary school told us on a Sunday morning, you can't meet here anymore. And that week on Tuesday, just a couple days after that announcement, someone approached me and said, hey, you're welcome to meet in our bike factory if you want. Every step of the way, God proved Himself faithful. And by the grace of God, in this little industrial area, the church grew and grew and grew.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Life.Church's third home in only 6 months.
But already we could tell that the bicycle factory was just not nearly big enough. It was just too small, and we needed to look for another place.
And we recognized it was time to try to build a new building. So we had a campaign called Find Us Faithful, where everybody prayed and committed to give above their normal giving over a 3-year period to fund this building.
Father, we give you the glory and the honor because you're the only one worthy. Or not because of a building, but because of what you've been doing in our lives since the first day we met.
Fortunately, we were able to acquire a great piece of land at 178th and Penn, which is kind of North Oklahoma City. And in March of 1998, we were able to move into that new building.
600-seater, and God did more in that little building than we ever thought possible.
Thanks for coming out for our first service in the new building. Bathrooms are there. Enough said, let's do business, all right?
Some people try to call us a mega church. Wow, you're a really large church. Well, compared to other churches, that might be true, but compared to the need, it's not true at all. compared to the need out there, we're still very, very small. We always have to grow larger. But at the same time, we have to grow smaller.
I remember Craig's comment to me whenever he hired me. He said, I'll get him in the front door. You get him connected. And the beginnings of that response was for our small groups.
When you have a group of people that you're doing life with, the church becomes very small.
And doing life together in the context of relationships, that's where lives are changed. Everybody is needed and everybody is known.
In the early days, as we're working hard to understand how best to help Life.Church grow, we realized that the weekend experience was absolutely critical to people connecting with Christ. We also realized how important it was for our kids to connect with Christ.
You think to yourself naturally, that becomes the church for tomorrow as it builds and grows and stays, and it is. But truthfully, it's not just that. It becomes the church of today.
And we feel a responsibility to partner with parents to help them lead their children to become fully devoted followers of Christ. The concept of video teaching came up because we realized that Craig was preaching at such a pace every weekend and so many different worship services that we just felt that really wouldn't be sustainable. And so we had to figure a way to really extend Craig.
We had a breakthrough moment in the church on January the 14th, 2001, when Sam was born, between Saturday night church and Sunday morning church.
And we had to figure out what were we going to do that Sunday morning, because Craig had taught Saturday night, and there was a great opportunity there to say, well, let's run the video from last night and let's see how it does.
And so we all met up at the hospital and really early in that morning and said, let's just run the video.
And we were shocked that people didn't seem to mind. In fact, they even liked it.
So we play it, and the remarkable thing was that there really was no difference. People were just engaged, watching the screen, and people got saved at the end of the service.
And that kind of broke through the wall. That video would allow us to be in more than one location, would allow Craig to be available at more than one time or multiple times. And that was kind of the beginning that let us launch into video experiences and video teaching.
We started to scratch our heads, well, if video teaching worked then, could it work again?
And so we began to ask ourselves, how could we do church beyond this one building?
And someone, and we don't even remember who it was, said, what if we did church in more than one location? And I remember kind of thinking, is that even legal? Can you do that? Because we didn't know anybody who was doing it.
We figured out we could rent a movie theater down the road, so we'd have sort of two locations, and we'd have Craig go back and forth between the campus.
And it wasn't long after that we had an opportunity to merge with a church in the Oklahoma City area called Metro Church.
And whenever that, coupled with our learnings about video and its ability, began to come together, we began to ask ourselves, how far would God take this premise? Could we be multi-site in a broad geographical sense and actually overcome the limits of location?
So the first time we wanted to test this concept of could this happen in more than two locations, maybe many more locations, we decided to test it in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was about 90 miles away from where we started here in Oklahoma City.
We started in a home on a 19-inch television set with a VHS recorder, and that was the birth of Life.Church in Tulsa.
And then from there, it went to Stillwater, Oklahoma.
And then from there, we went to South Oklahoma City and launched a campus in a leased facility.
And then from there, it began to just blow up, and there were other campuses happening, and then merger opportunities with other churches in Nashville area, and in Hendersonville, Tennessee, in Wellington, Florida, in Albany, New York, and in Fort Worth, Texas.
And then Church Online, taking the message literally around the world, having the truest sense of what it means to be a multi-site church.
In 2006, we were faced with an interesting challenge.
As to what do we do with the resources, all the video files, graphic files, all this stuff, all this content that had been created throughout the years. And it was like, well, we could sell it and maybe generate some revenue to perpetuate the mission, or we could give it away.
And this became one of the most important questions that we would ever answer. Because in our hearts, we thought this would be amazing to give the resources away for free. But at the same time, in our minds, we had to ask the question, can we really afford to do this?
We were month to month in bills. It's not like we were, a lot of people look on and like, oh, we are a large church. It's easy for you to make that decision. Well, that was not when we made the decision.
Well, we took the step of faith and we decided to give our resources. And it was at that time that God really started to bless us with even more resources.
We had a church approach us from Ada, Oklahoma. It's a small town in Oklahoma.
A local pastor came up to us and said, could we use your video teaching every week in our church?
And that's when we began the concept of network churches.
We were blessed later to give away the church online platform.
We thought, what if we could take the technology that we're using and we had invested money developing for us to do church online, and what if we could make that technology available for other churches to use?
The YouVersion Bible app, I'm so thankful for this. I was actually saved when someone gave me a Gideon Bible. Now, we're able to give by the hundreds of millions free Bibles to people on smart devices all over the world. Same with the Bible app for kids. We want to leverage technology in every way we can to push the message of Jesus forward. We met together on January 7th, 1996 in a snowstorm in a two-car garage on the very first time, and we had almost nothing. And yet, we had everything because we had the presence of God working in people's lives. From that day until this day, until the day that I die, we will do anything short of sin to reach people who don't know Christ.
It's been something that we've done from day one.
And that message resonates as strongly, if not stronger today, than it did on day one.
We're going to do whatever we can to reach people, no matter who they are, no matter where they came from.
And that means being willing to do things that others aren't doing to reach those people.
And to reach people no one's reaching, we'll have to do things no one's doing. Whatever it takes, we'll do anything short of sin to reach people who do not know Christ.